need to make per,
Sorry.
sorry. That it talks now. It didn't used to talk. Um, so how much does a person need to make per hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in San Jose? You can put it in the chat, you can take yourself off, but what is your guess? How much do they need to make per hour? See, we don't have anything in the chat yet. 20, thank you, Daisy. Storm, do you have a guess?
Ooh, a 2-bedroom. I would say,
You got 25.
I would say like 35 an hour.
35 an hour. Okay, Daisy, what is the answer? $52 an hour.
Ooh.
All right, yeah, so that just gives you an idea of how expensive it is to work here. And if you're trying to live by yourself, you need to at least be making $52 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom. Usually people will have a roommate or something, so then that does bring it down to about $26 an hour. So that's just an idea. So that's what we're dealing with, and this is why budgeting is so important. So if we can move forward. Damon said 40. Yeah, you were close. One of the biggest things about budgeting is basically being able to separate your needs and your wants, right? So what are needs? They're your rent, their food, utilities, car payments, food, student loans, any other set bills that you have to pay month to month. Those are most likely going to fall in your needs category. And then you have your wants, and that could be the new phone, it could be a new outfit, it could be a vacation. I always want those. So it can be a lot of different things, and that's going to look different for everyone. Can you put in the chat some needs or some wants that you may have? I know a popular one is Wi-Fi. That's definitely a need now, right? Do we have any other examples? Oh, we have someone else in the candles. Yeah. Any decoration type things that you might want for your space. And there's a long list. So we can just move forward here. Good medical insurance. Yeah, that's a need. That's definitely a need. You definitely need a medical insurance, and that is actually going to vary, right? The cost of it's going to vary depending on who you're going through and the resources that you have available to you. If you are working and they happen to have medical insurance, then that's good, but not everyone has that luxury, right? So there are 2 different types of budgeting tools that you can use. One is the 50-30-20 budget. And I will say, I personally do not use this budget, but it is very popular. And so I wanted to introduce it to you. The rule of this budget is that, after all your income has been taxed, you have, whatever it is that you take home, right? So let's say you take home $2,500, right? They're saying 50% of that is supposed to go to your needs, 30% is supposed to go to your wants, and 20% is supposed to go to your long-term savings. And so we have a calculator that breaks that down for you. Daisy, would you be able to pull that up for me? And, this is kind of the reason why I don't really like this budget, is because it's really not that realistic for a lot of people. So on our homepage, we have a list of calculators. They're free. You can use them anytime you want. And so if you ever need one, we have a long list of them. So feel free to use them. But we're going to be looking at the 50-30-20 calculator right now. All right, so let's say 2,500. And this is, after taxes. So this is the breakdown. They're saying $1,250 is supposed to go to your wants and, or I'm sorry, to your needs, and that includes rent. That includes rent, that includes food, that includes any bills that you have. They're saying then 750 is supposed to go to your wants, and then 500 is supposed to go to your savings. Now, is this realistic for anyone on this call? I know that it's not realistic for me, and that's the reason why I don't use it. But there, like I said, this budget is actually pretty popular. And I would say that's probably more popular among people who, probably live with their parents or really don't have any bills that they have to pay. Yeah. Yeah. So for the average working person who is trying to get by the 50-30-20 budget, you probably won't use it. So now we're going to go to a more realistic budget called the zero-based budget. And so what is a zero-based budget? It's just what it says. You budget until you get to zero. So after you make a list of your monthly income, and that could be, even if you only get, say you had extra income for a month, you want to make sure that you are accounting for that. And so you may have to do multiple budgets, right? You might have to do one in January, and then February you have that extra income. You want to make sure that you're doing another budget, so that way you're accounting for everything. So make sure that you are adjusting your budget as needed. And that's one of the best things about a budget, is that it's not set in stone. You can do what you need to do with it. So you want to make sure that you know all of your monthly income. You want to also make a list of all of your expenses. And then you want to, any, non-monthly expenses, maybe you have, this month is what, Father's Day, maybe you want to do something special on that day. So you want to make sure that you include that in your budget, because if you don't, and you just end up spending this money for Father's Day, now you're dipping into something else. It could be your savings, it could be from a bill. And so you don't want that to happen. You want to know where all of your money is going. So if you have a birthday coming up, any other special holidays that you want to spend for, make sure you include it in your budget. And so after you have, a list of all of your expenses, then you will basically start inputting, those amounts. And so say you now have $200 left over. It doesn't have a place yet. So now you can be like, okay, well, I can put some in my savings, or I can pay down any debt that you may have. So you can decide where you want to put it, but the whole point is to basically budget until you have nothing left. Every penny must have a place. Does that make sense? I know I have my Invisalign in, so like I'm kind of lisping a little bit, but hopefully you can, I'm clear. Does anyone need me to explain anything more about the budget? It's flexible. Again, you may have to do it, once a month. If your situation changes, if you don't have a set fixed income, but it varies, this could be if you're like an Uber driver, right? You don't have a set income. It changes month to month depending on how much you work, right? So you're going to have to revisit that budget often. And also there's a lot of different resources you can use to help you budget. You don't have to do the whole pen to paper thing anymore, and you have to do the adding and the subtracting and all that, because there's worksheets that you can use to help you do all of that. So all you have to do is know what your expenses are, know how much money you have coming in, and then you input everything into that page, and you get the totals right away. So this is one of the most realistic, fun budgets that you can use. This is the one that I use. This is the one that I would definitely recommend that anyone else can use, because it's very clear cut. So if there's no more questions, we can move forward. And so now that we've talked a bit about budgeting, one of the things that we like to mention is debt. because you may be on time with any payments that you may have to make, but it's still debt, right? And if you see in your budget that you have money left over, it could be a good idea to put that towards your debt. And then you can put whatever else from that into your savings if you don't want to put it all towards your debt, right? So there's two debt repayment methods. The first is the snowball method. This is basically where you make the minimum payments on everything. So you're not late. You do not want to be late because then you get charged interest, late fees, and a whole bunch of other things. And then you will basically pay extra on the next smallest debt that you have. And you continue to do that until it's paid off. And then you go to the next smallest debt and you make however much extra payment you can on that one. And you do that until your debt is repaid. And then there's the opposite, where you have the avalanche method. And that is basically where you pay on your most expensive debt. So this could be the debt that has the highest interest. Say it's your credit card and you have to pay 22% interest every month. That's a lot. And so what you would do is, again, make sure you make the minimum payments on everything and then pay more towards that most expensive debt that you have. And you may be surprised by how much it will cut down what you're going to be owing later on. And so this is just if you have anything left over, because some people don't know what to do with it. And some people are like, oh, I should just put it towards my savings. And that's a good idea. But if you have debt, you want to make sure that you're addressing your debt as well. So you have to find a balance. Does anyone have any questions? No? Storm, did you need to say something? No?
No, it's going well. Thanks for checking in. I'll make some announcements at the end.
Okay. All right. So one of the main things that can ruin any budget is impulse buying. And so you want to be very careful with this. I know I have that problem.
Alita?
To kind of, address that.
Alita?
So, yeah.
We have someone commented debts mean what types? I'm not sure what she meant.
Let's see, debt. So it could be any debt. It could be credit card debt. It could be a student loan that you have. That's a private student loan. It could be, maybe even your car, right? Like, yes, you have your payment that you have to make, but if you make an extra, payment towards that, you can cut down on the interest that you're going to be paying. So it can mean any type of debt that you have. So I hope that clarifies for your question. All right. So for impulse buying, there's a few things that you can do. One, if you catch yourself playing mental gymnastics, so that's like, oh, well, do I really need it? No, I don't, but I really want it. There's probably a good chance you don't need it. And again, it's about your needs versus your wants, right? And then also you want to remember your budget. Yes, this will be shared, so don't worry about it. You can access it later. So, definitely remember your budget. Did you put money aside for this purchase? If you are a Target fanatic, right? And you're like, I like to go to Target, I walk around and you end up buying stuff. If it's something that you enjoy and that you can afford, you can put it in your budget. You can make a Target section in your budget and set aside, say, $75 for Target, right? And so when you go to Target and you're finding all of these things that you like, you can be like, well, it is in my budget. I know I can afford it, so I'm gonna purchase it, right? But if it's not in your budget, remember you're taking that money from somewhere else because all of your money has already been allocated. So if you are now spending $50 at Target, you could be taking $50 from your savings. You could be taking $50 from, paying off your debt and so forth. So that's something important that you may want to remember. And another thing that you can use is pickup, and that's very popular now. If you know I need X, Y, and Z, you can go online, and a lot of times it could be, you could pick it up. So you can order and pay online, go to the store, go straight to the pickup counter, and you don't have to worry about walking around the store and seeing all of these other items, right? So those are just some quick tips to kind of help curb impulse buying. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? All right. All right, and so, oh, thank you, Chanel. So another thing, and I'm guilty of this too, is, sometimes you just like to eat out, it's quick, you don't have to worry about cooking at home and wasting all that time, right? But it gets very costly. Not only could it be unhealthy, but it's more costly. And so we have the examples here of, going to McDonald's, you have a family of 3, family of 4, how much does it cost? And these are old pictures, so I'm pretty sure it costs more now. But it still gets the idea across that, to feed your family of 4, one day, one meal, it costs you $30, right? And so if you're doing that all the time or every day, just imagine how much money you're spending. Now, it's okay to treat yourself, right? But it goes back to your budget. Did you include, an eat out budget, right? If you didn't, again, you're going to be taking that money from somewhere else. And, and it is cheaper a lot of times to cook at home, especially if you have a family. Because you see here on the breakdown that we have for a burger, you go out to McDonald's and you're paying, $9+ for a burger when you can make it at home for $2, right? So when you have a big family to feed, that makes a difference. And also meat prices. This is an old chart. The last they have is 2015, but every year, prices change and they go up. And again, incomes, they don't match, the cost of everything, right? So inflation. So that's definitely something to consider. And then getting Starbucks coffee. Yeah, exactly. Starbucks is expensive too, depending on if you like to get frappuccinos like I do. That's like $5, $5 for one drink. So when I do it, I make sure it's like, maybe it's very sparingly, right? Because $5 is a lot if it's something you do every single day. And so some extra tips for grocery shopping is to, 1, make a list. Make a list so, 1, you know what you need to get, and you won't forget stuff, because that's my problem. I always forget, and then you have to come back to the store to get it. Compare name brand versus store brand products, because a lot of the time you're paying for the name, right? Because the product itself will taste the same. There's some exceptions to this, but for the most part, you're paying for the name. Also, if you use certain products, buy in bulk, like get a Costco membership, you can invest in one of those, especially if you have a family to feed and they eat a lot of eggs, they drink a lot of milk, and so those are things that you can buy in bulk, and it saves you money instead of going back to the store every week, getting the little bucket, right? Use a smaller cart. So again, if you are one of those people who are like, you kind of just roam around and, you like to see what's going on in the store, use a smaller cart, use the handheld cart. If you know that, I only need 3 things, there's no need to go get a huge basket, right? And then plus, when you have the carry cart, you're like, it's starting to get heavy. It's time for me to go, get in line. Nene, that's so me. Yeah, right. So again, and then there's also still there's a drive up or the pickup option that you can use, again, to avoid walking around the store, picking up things and spending extra money. So those are just some tips for grocery shopping. And if you have any tips that you would like to share with everyone on the call, please put it in the chat, because trust me, there's no shortage of advice that we can give, right? All right. All right, so a lot of times when we're talking about budgeting, people always like, well, if I'm saving, where can I put my savings, right? And so I like to include different types of investment options. Now, I will say this, I will not tell you where to put your money. I just want to introduce you to options that you may have. So just to go over a few, oh, I know that there was also another comment here. Oh, your husband always wants to eat out. You don't know how to get at home. He's a cancer patient, so he never knows what he'll feel like eating. I'm sorry, I can't, because your name is not on there. It just comes up as iPhone. I think it starts with the M. I know that for sure. But make sure that you are including that in his, but Mariella, yes, I was somewhat close. Thank you. Yeah, you can recreate some recipes that he likes, because pretty much all of that stuff is on Google too. So that's definitely an option. And so let me go back to what I was saying. But so different types of investments. There's stocks, bonds, real estate, which means that you're either purchasing rental properties or you're flipping houses. There's different high yield savings accounts like money market accounts and CDs. And then of course, there's the 401k that you will get through your employer. There's also a wealth of other investment accounts like the Roth. There's the Roth traditional, and then there's another version, and those are also investment accounts, more so for retirement, but it's still a place where you can put your money, and it will be a place that you can save. So we can move forward. First, I want to talk about the stock market. And the only thing that I want to say about the stock market, especially right now, is that it's very volatile. So, and that just means it's very unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's very, very likely that you could lose money. So it's high risk. Chanel, will we be touching up on investing? So for investing, this what we're talking about now is kind of all that I will touch on when it comes to investing. But I can say that if you have a bank somewhere like Wells Fargo, they all have like an investment person that you can talk to, and they can also help you. But that's not something that I feel comfortable giving, because if someone loses money, I don't want to be responsible for that, right? And so we'll leave that up to the professionals who are consistently looking at all the different options and the stock market. Yeah, and please ask all of your questions that you have. Yeah, your credit union has a free financial advisor. Yes, absolutely. Every bank, credit union will have a financial advisor that you can go and you can talk to. Now, I will say this, they're usually free for you to consult. However, if you want them to actually invest the money for you, they typically charge. So that's something to consider. But you can definitely find out all that information once you have that conversation with them. But it doesn't hurt to go and ask questions and see what your options are. But when it comes to the stock market, it's high risk. That means that you could make money really quickly, but you can lose it just as quickly, right? And so you want to be very, very careful. If you're thinking about stocks, make sure you leave it up to the professionals. I know that there's lots of apps out there where you can do your own investing. And I'm not going to say that you shouldn't, but I'm just going to say proceed with caution no matter what you do, especially if you are not well versed in the stock market. it could be a very dangerous thing to play with. Let me see. Do I need to have a minimum amount for free financial advice? No, you shouldn't. But again, I know that's, at Excite. It will depend upon where you bank. I'm pretty sure that there is a minimum if you're asking for them to invest for you. But there should not be a minimum to get advice. And if there is, then you should be able to access free advice in other locations if your bank is not cooperating with you. All right, if we can move forward. So does anyone have any questions about the stock market and the risk that's involved? Because that's one of the main things that I want to get across, is that it's very dangerous. Okay, we can move forward. So what does financial advisors offer? So it really depends upon, what you need, right? So financial advisors, they can look at a wealth of different things. They can do budgeting, they can help you with certain things with credit. It really just depends. Now, if you're talking investment, usually their title will include that. So it will be like financial investment officer or something like that. So you will know that, hey, this person works with investment. Usually they're pretty good at making that known. But a regular financial advisor can do all the basic things from credit to budgeting to helping you with debt management and things of that nature. Yeah, so stocks are becoming very, very popular. I know you guys probably heard about AMC and GameStop and all the things that they were doing with that. But it's still really not something you want to just dabble in and not have any knowledge of it. But stocks are becoming increasingly popular, especially with the apps that are available. Bitcoin is also very, very popular now, and you have so many people investing in it, in different cryptocurrencies. So it's important to know the risk that is involved when you enter that space. All right, so now that we've talked about the more risky stock market, now I want to talk about safe investments. And one of those options are bonds. I think bonds were more popular like in the olden days, where you can like buy them, you get like your certificate and you just hold on to it. But bonds are still out there. Usually they're given by the government because they want to do certain projects or something of that nature. So you can buy a bond, you'll hold on to it. The biggest thing about really any investment is you want to understand the terms, because when it comes to bonds, you don't get that money back right away. It's usually a several year waiting period before you see any of your money back, right? But it is guaranteed to wield some kind of extra money source. And it probably isn't going to be that much, just to be honest, because typically safe investments don't yield thousands upon thousands of dollars unless you've invested a whole bunch. But again, you will get some kind of extra interest on your money. But they are considered safe. Who sells bonds? Can we go to the site, Daisy? Can you pull up the site? So when you're thinking about bonds, you want to make sure that you're going to reputable sources. Typically, the government will sell bonds, but there's other agencies that will sell them as well if they're looking for investment in projects that they're doing. There's one source that Daisy is pulling up now that has some really good information. So if you're interested in bonds, we can definitely put the link in the chat for you to explore later. But let me just let this load. so I can at least show you what the home page looks like. All right, it's coming. So this is basically what it's like. And there are different sources where you can get them. Again, we can put this link in the chat. It gives you some really good information. You just want to make sure that you understand, you know, when the mature date is, and that's when you're going to get your money with any interest, and how much you need. This one just so happens to be a $50. They're usually, now they're more electronic, so you don't have to storing them in a safe place. Everything is documented online, but definitely check this website out. And you know that this is a valid website because it's .gov. So all of the .com, you know, websites, be very careful. I don't want you going and, you know, investing into something and it turns out to be a scam. So make sure you're using reputable sources. This is a government website. So if you're going to get your information or if you're going to buy a bond, make sure you're getting it from a validated source. How much will the minimum be? So it will depend. They will tell you, but they do have different denominations. This one just so happens to be 50. And so once you found a bond that, you know, you're ready to invest in, you'll be able, it'll tell you how much you have to put in. Can you still get them at the bank? You know what? I don't think we have bonds at our bank. And I haven't heard of them at any other institutions, but I'm sure you can ask. But probably not many banks do it anymore. I know that years ago it was a thing, but bonds are not as popular as they once were. So, but you can definitely ask. I would ask them because that's a really good question. All right. And then we have, so you have the regular savings account, right? And this is the one that you typically open when you get your checking account, right? And usually the interest that you get on this account is 0.01. And so that means in order to see any interest on your money, you have to have at least thousands of dollars in your savings account to get pennies. And so it is an option, but if you're really trying to make a bigger return on your money, usually traditional savings accounts are not the way to go. I will say that credit unions will have higher interest rates on their savings accounts. So if you're like, you know, I just want to have one account, I just want it to be my savings account, I would definitely recommend that you look into credit unions because they have pretty good rates, especially compared to commercial banks. You'll actually see some extra money in your account. So now we're going to talk about other high yield savings accounts. So one is a high yield savings account. It's a bank account that earns you higher interest than the traditional regular savings account. And pre-pandemic, these rates were very competitive and they were typically over 1%. Now they are not. I will say that the interest rates are always changing and it really depends upon what's happening in the world. And so as we know, things have changed drastically. And so the rates have too. They have dipped. I won't say that they're extremely low, but they're not where they were, you know, a year and a half ago. And so what are the pros of having this type of account? Well, it's a less risky investment. So again, you don't have to worry about losing your money. And it makes you more money than a standard savings account. But the cons are, especially now with everything becoming increasingly you know, internet based, a lot of these high yield savings accounts have moved online. And so that means one, you need to have access to the internet. And a lot of these online banks do not have branches. So you're not just able to go down the street and go, you know, see what's going on, right? So that can be a con. And so if you're considering one, I would look at your financial institution first. And if it's not meeting your needs, definitely do some comparison among different financial institutions, because everyone's rate is different. So Chase will have theirs, Wells Fargo will have theirs, Star One will have theirs, we will have ours. And typically people want to get the best rate. So in order to do that, you need to make sure that you are doing some comparison shopping. And Chanel says, I have First United Credit Union and they treat customers way more better than commercial banks. Yeah, that's pretty typical, and I hear that a lot. And I think that's really because credit unions are more community-based. You're not going to find the First United Credit Union, outside of its geographic location. So if it's in California, you're not going to find the same institution in Atlanta, Georgia, or in New York, right? It's geographic based for a specific location. And so they really get to know their community way more than commercial banks that are everywhere, and they can't prioritize, their customers because there's too many of them. So it's way more informal than credit union. Thank you for your comment, Chanel. All right, and so I also want to show you a certificate of deposit, and I want to do a little bit of a comparison because I want you to really see what that looks like. So Daisy, are we able to pull up ours? And then we'll choose another institution to look at, just so you can see what I mean when I say you want to make sure that you're comparison shopping. Because a lot of people, they want to stick with the institution they've been banking with, and that's no problem, but it's always important to know that there could be something better out there. So this is example number 1. So our CDs are called share certificates, and we have different terms ranging from 6 months being the least to 60 months, which is 5 years, to being the most. And so just looking at the 6-month certificate, the dividend rate, which is the same as interest. So credit unions use dividends as opposed to interest when they're referring to, interest rates, or APY. So ours is 0.35%, and you need a minimum of $500 to open this CD. So that means you can't open it with 400. You can't open it with 450. You need to have a minimum of 500, and you can do more if you choose. But your money, remember, is going to be tied up dependent upon the term you choose. So that could be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, right? So let's remember these rates, and then let's look up another institution. Does anyone want to have an idea of who we should check? Maybe someone that you currently bank with. Can you share that website with the CDs? Yes, Daisy. All right, let's do Bank of America. And Upward Credit Union, I never heard of that. I think we should do that one too. Oh, it's located in Burlingame. And see, I never heard of it because it's geographically placed, right? So it's in Burlingame, but it's not down here. So you're not really aware of it. And I just want to say that if you're thinking about CDs, if you're thinking about bonds and different investment options, make sure that you are not using money that you are going to need. This is for any extra money that you have apart from your emergency savings, apart from any other money that you're going to need to set aside for something else. So this is just extra money that you have, and you can and you don't think that you're going to be needing it because you already have your emergency savings in place and so forth. So the last thing I want is for you to put all of your money into one of these investment options. I would absolutely advise against that. Now, if one of your goals is to eventually work your way up and get into these investment options, make sure you include it in your budget as its own section. That way you can work towards it. Okay. So it looks like for Bank of America has terms from 7 months to 37, and you need, let's do 6 months. Let's just compare. Let's do less than 10,000. Okay, so perfect. So for 6 months, and you have less than $10,000, you're going to be making 0.03. Now, is that higher or lower than 0.35? And I don't mean to make you do math, but I just want you to see the difference. Is that higher or lower than 0.35%? 0.03. Yeah, it's lower. So this is what I mean about shopping around. So if you've been with Bank of America your whole life and you're like, I love it, you know, I want to get a certificate with them, you could be missing out. You're missing out on a higher rate somewhere else. And typically when it comes to money, when it comes to getting more money, you want to get the best rates, right? And so another thing about credit unions, and I don't know how many of you were here for the first session, but for credit unions, we have a field of membership, and we also have a membership fee, right? And that is the savings account. So in order to get any of our services, you have to be a member, meaning that you have to get a savings account that will require $10 in the savings account. And so once you become a member, you have access to everything that we have to offer. And so some people, they don't want to have to worry about becoming a member. And so they shy away from credit unions. But I don't want people to be afraid of it, because there are a lot of benefits that come with being a part of the credit union world. So if you're one of those people who are like, I don't like the extra step, you know, I would absolutely recommend that you look into it, because as you see, ours compared to Bank of America is much higher. But it's still your money, right? If you close, you'll get that money back. Well, you have to wait at least that 6 months. So if you chose a 6-month term, you have to wait 6 months. If you choose to get it out earlier than that, you will be assessed a penalty fee. And that will vary by institution. So this is the thing about investments, is that it's not a quick turnaround, right? Your money will be held for whichever term you choose. So,
Yeah, Alita, I just want to add in the bottom too, like you always notice in the fine print, right? It says right here in the bottom, no early withdrawal penalties apply. Offers subject to change without notice, and limit 1 per member.
Yeah, so we have it in our fine print that say, hey, if you try to take this out earlier, you will be assessed a penalty fee.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there was an exception given the pandemic where they were not charging a penalty fee, but typically, yeah. So just anyone, I know I said a mouthful and I was taking you here and I was taking you there. Does anyone have any questions? Because I know we have about 13 minutes left and I want to make sure that I am being mindful of your time. Are there any questions? Okay, it doesn't look like it. But if there are, that's okay. You can just put it in the chat. But yeah, and so I know we didn't get to the other credit union, but you at least have an idea of, are these, yes. So credit unions are actually insured by the NCUA. So you will see NCUA insured. For commercial banks, you will see FDIC insured. So how about those investments when there are a lot of companies and you're with other people? So investments. So you're investing into, it sounds like you're investing into a different company. Is that what you're referring to? Because with something like that, you want to be careful. Oh, mutual shares. Yeah, that's also another investment option. I would still be careful with that because if the company goes under, you know, you're probably not going to get anything out of it. So, you know, your money is not insured. It's not, you know, being held by the government. It's not being held by a bank that's insured. You're just kind of betting like, hey, I'm going to invest in your company because I believe in you. But if it goes under, so does your money. Yeah. All right. So no matter what you do, you just want to be aware, you know, and so this goes back to making sure that you're reading that fine print, making sure that you're asking questions, making sure that you're feeling comfortable when you're asking those questions. And if they're like kind of beating around the bush and they're not answering your questions directly, you know, that's a red sign, a red flag. And you want to be very careful because remember, this is your money and you're investing it. And, you know, and when you're investing, depending on the type of investment, it could be very risky. So you want to know what you're getting yourself into. Make sure that you understand how long your money is going to be held up, what type of interest you're going to be receiving. Is it going to be compounded monthly, quarterly, yearly, daily? Because there's a lot of different options. Make sure you know the maturity date. When can you expect to see this return? And make sure that you always get things in writing, especially if, you know, it's one of those things where you're like kind of like writing, you're like, oh, I'm just going to invest into your company, right? Again, is there really a guaranteed investment that you're going to get something? I can't say. So you just want to make sure that you're asking questions. And if anything seems fishy, my advice would be to abort the mission. Abort the mission and find other options that are safe. Let's see. I know we have some questions in the chat. Let me go back. And I couldn't hear what you were saying in the beginning about car payments and interest. Yeah. So when you have a car payment, right, you are paying interest. That could be 5.99, it could be 8%, whatever your term is. And so when you are making a payment, part of that payment is going towards interest. So typically, you can make a principal only payment. You can make you know, just a regular payment that will split between principal and interest. But when you pay more than like your minimum, that actually knocks down how much you will pay in interest because they judge the interest off of the principal balance. So if you can knock down that principal balance, you'll end up paying less interest. So if you can make an extra payment, you'll see the difference in what you'll be paying at the end of the day. And you'll also pay it off faster than whatever your term is. So, you know, unless you have one of those situations where they're like, if you pay this off early, we're going to charge you, you can make extra payments. You'll pay it off faster. You'll pay less interest. All right, and so say you're done paying your debt off, how much a month should you be putting in your savings? So they say that you should save at least 20%. Again, that's not realistic for everyone. So my advice would be to save as much as you can. And again, this different for you versus someone else. I would say to have at least 2 different savings accounts. And if you're going to be investing, that's another one. So you will have your traditional short-term savings. That's like the one that you have attached to your checking account. You'll have your emergency savings. That's just for emergencies, that unexpected, unavoidable, now I have to pay $300 type of situation. And then you'll have your investment account. And this is just so that you don't end up investing the money in your savings and that you're going to end up needing, right? So that's my advice. But they always say at least save 20%. But if you can save 5%, I think that's good, just as good. Okay. Okay, if you don't pay down debt, you want to make sure you have a balance and do both. Yeah. All right. And I think there's a lot going on in the chat. I'm trying to catch up. So are there any other questions that I missed or no?
I think that was it. I try to help you in the chat, Alita.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and if you have any questions, you can always email me. I'll put it in the chat. And feel free to